I mean, Joe would be ripe for indictment. So you're saying that Trump shouldn't get immunity, but Joe Biden would? I didn't do anything like he did. I ran a great country.
Do you know who's running our country? You might think that these people are literally robbing you and making you believe everything they say. Make no mistake about it, Kamala Harris was born and bred, socially engineered and mind control programmed to function as a Manchurian candidate and female Obama. In point of fact, just like Barack Hussein Obama, she is not even a U.S. citizen.
We had Kamala Harris coming out and saying this back in 2017. She posted this. She said, "Say it loud, say it clear. Everyone is welcome here." Oh my God, it rhymes. No ban, no wall. That's a powerful hashtag, Kamala. But now that she is vice president and the US has completely lost control of its southern border with more than 2 million expected to cross in a single year, this is what Kamala is saying.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come.
As a matter of historical fact, Kamala Harris was not even eligible to run for POTUS as she did during the 2020 election cycle, since she clearly does not meet the criteria of the U.S. Constitution's natural-born citizen clause. Democrat POTUS nominee Joe Biden has spent months floating one black woman after another as his VP pick, knowing all along his choice was ordered by his hidden masters to be Senator Kamala Harris of California. Don't you think that's very strange?
You elected the highest ranking black Indian with Indian background woman in American history to be vice president.
I don't know. Is there a ranking system now for Indians? That's what he said. Here are the president's precise words. You elected the highest ranking black Indian with Indian background woman in American history to be vice president. Now, I'm not aware of this ranking system for black Indians with Indian background, which seems to exist in Joe's head, but the vice president was in this week used to good effect by the White House.
The strategy was to put off any official announcement as long as possible in order to subject Harris to as little vetting as possible. This scheme was quite similar to the total lack of vetting of Obama in 2008, who never even presented a valid birth certificate. See scientific evidence, Obama birth certificate copy proven, fake and forged.
This document is fictitious and it's been represented to the people of Maricopa County. Now, I'm sorry that the president claimed ownership of it. I'm sorry that it's the president. But if somebody represented something fictitious to you and you acted on it and found out it was wrong and you came to us, you'd want us to look at it. It's time for this charade to stop. This is a real long time to be looking into something. A lot of money has been spent never to release this. And now that it's released, there's no evidence that it's authentic.
The 2020 campaign season has been the most intense and competitive in American electoral history, so Harris was sure to elicit more scrutiny than any previous POTUS candidate in 230 plus years.
Do you think any of this is fair? Do you think you're being set up to fail?
No, I don't believe I'm being set up to fail, but
because these are Democrats saying
but more important, I'm vice president of the United States. Anything that I handle is because it's a tough issue, and it couldn't be handled at some other level.
Is the fact that you're a woman and the fact that you are a minority in this office part of why there is such scrutiny?
I'll leave that for others to deal with. I have a job to do, and I'm going to get that job done.
Of course, the reason for this extraordinary inquiry into Harris's background is because she will become president should Biden successfully steal his way to a victory. The only reason why the DNC permitted a Biden nomination was so he could justifiably be replaced with Kamala Harris. Candidate Biden has already proven himself to be totally unfit and profoundly debilitated to occupy the Oval Office.
Between his vicious, prolonged school closures and his administration's relentless effort to indoctrinate America's youth, crooked Joe Biden has been a disaster for American students, but really, he's been a disaster for America. As our nation has seen for the past 3 years, the need for freedom and education has never been greater, And that is why, as your 47th president, I will fight for parents' rights and universal school choice in every state in America. And we will win.
Everyone knows this, which means that upon his compelled resignation or obvious incapacitation, Harris would become the first female POTUS. Why was Harris really selected for this most difficult of tasks? Challenging Trump and becoming the future prez in the COVID era. The most astute political analysts knew instantly after Harris first presented herself publicly post-facelift that she was Biden's first choice.
We've all seen clips of Biden regularly looking dazed and confused coming off stage. We've even seen a giant bunny act as his handler, ordering him to move along when asked tricky questions about Afghanistan. You know, questions like, why did you abandon Americans there? But this week, it wasn't a bunny. As President Biden put it, it was a highest-ranking black Indian of Indian background who stepped in to stop Joe wandering aimlessly after an appearance. Take it away, Nurse Kamalla.
For example, did Kamala Harris just have a facelift in anticipation of being named Biden's running mate? This was no ordinary facelift, incidentally. It was a major overhaul whereby some folks no longer recognized her as the U.S. Senator from California. Apparently, her handlers felt that she needed to appeal to a specific voting demographic and that the lift would help out. Now the body politic knows how utterly incompetent the Democrat campaign consultants are.
Everybody noticed Kamala Harris' new face, screaming a horrific plastic surgery job gone wrong. Christina Layla at the Gateway Pundit reports that Democrat Senator Kamala Harris on Saturday night appeared on MSNBC to discuss the late Congressman John Lewis, but everybody was actually talking about her new face instead. Yeah, let's watch.
He lived his life. You know, my mother used to say you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. That's how John Lewis lived his life.
When we think of even gun control.
Okay, so this is a picture of what she looked like before, and now you can see the picture on the left afterwards.
On the other hand, some election analysts have wondered out loud whether the new Harris is actually a double and communist Manchurian candidate who was quickly pushed onto the public stage at a critical moment of the nomination process. See, is this person a doppelganger for one of California's U.S. senators? This suspiciously timed facelift has justifiably got the right into all sorts of speculation about the current identity of Harris.
He said because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
no, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to add, but
here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I'm
speaking.
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. $400,000
He said
a
he's going
year.
to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait.
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth.
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay.
Given the obvious use of doppelgangers for Hillary Clinton, it's clear that the Democrats will not hesitate to insert an impersonator into the VP slot in order to carry out their nefarious communist agenda. What better way to do just that than to slip in the clone simultaneously with her so-called facelift? It's also true that the original Kamala Harris developed a reputation as the meanest, rudest, ugliest politico inside the Beltway.
And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing.
Many commentators have even suggested that there's no other politician in the Washington, D.C. firmament who is as reckless and brash, shameless and without conscience as this California hitman. And that includes Hillary Clinton, as long as the Clinton body count is today.
To the cackling nincompoop who is a heartbeat away from the presidency, the comprehensively incapable Kamala Harris. Her wretched performance this week has cemented her place as the worst vice president in US history, and my word. And another one who couldn't even spell potato. But you know what? Dan Quayle is a genius when compared to Kamala. After a cringeworthy performance in recent weeks, she had the opportunity to redeem herself during a vitally important trip to Poland and Romania as Russia's invasion of Ukraine plunges the region into a deepening crisis. The White House said her visit will demonstrate the strength and unity of the NATO alliance. What it actually did was demonstrate the utter ineptitude of the Vice President.
Without a doubt, the primary reason why the globalists want Harris installed in the White House is to zealously foment the race war that Obama started the day he took office. As senator, Harris did her level best to instigate a race war through her prominent participation in the very cunning and covert Operation Crafty Beaver.
That might go down as a high point of Kamala Harris's run for president, a run that ended today, strapped for cash and seemingly lacking in significant voter support. It's a somewhat surprising turn, though, given her extensive political profile in the years leading up to the 2020 race and the overwhelming support she received at her announcement back in January. Look at that huge crowd. But cracks in the foundation of her campaign weren't hard to miss, especially in recent weeks. There were concerns about fundraising, questions about her ideological place in the field, and reports from inside her team about a chaotic campaign environment.
It's also important to point out that Smollettgate's scandal goes way beyond Kamala Harris and right up to Obama. Not only that, but also that Harris is also intimately caught up in the ongoing Bordergate. See, why does Kamala Harris promote human trafficking across the border?
I visited a town on the northern side of the U.S. border named Calexico. And I went to Calexico because I wanted to see for myself the tunnels through which I knew. And during that trip, I saw in person and in photographs tunnels with walls as smooth as the walls of your living room, complete with lighting and air conditioning. And what became very clear to me is through those tunnels, we're being trafficked, where some people were making a whole lot of money.
But perhaps the greatest telltale sign of her corruption and treachery is that Kamala Harris took money from the firm behind Jeffrey Epstein plea deal. The Democrat strategy of forcing the Republicans to never investigate Obama, with the exception of the ever-courageous Sheriff Joe Arpaio, allowed him to get away with bloody murder and worse over his two catastrophic terms. The no evidence claim about Biden corruption is looking increasingly ridiculous. Joe Biden's defenders have been on a wild ride this past year. It began with them arguing that the president knew absolutely nothing about his family's influence peddling business, to arguing that it's no big deal that Chicom wire payoffs happen to have Biden's home address listed on them.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of the oversight senior staff members, and Liz, it was really eye-opening to me. We've been at this for now 7 months, and he told me that, we've subpoenaed bank records 6 times of Biden business associates, and every single time, 6 out of 6 times, we found more foreign money paid to the Bidens. So, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're continuing to dig, we're continuing to investigate, and the sad thing is, every time that we find out another piece to the puzzle, it fits in perfectly with the greater picture. They never contradict each other. It's always more intriguing and more fascinating in a very dark sense. And to me, I'm already at the point where we're above a preponderance of the evidence that the Biden family is corrupt, including Joe Biden.
The quality of the excuses, unsurprisingly, has been deteriorating rapidly. They largely entail repeating the words no and evidence in a perpetual loop. But this week, when James Comer released financial records of Hunter Biden receiving 2 wire transfers totaling $260.0 in 2019 from Beijing, with the president's Delaware home listed as the beneficiary address, the White House jumped into action. Imagine them arguing that if someone stayed at their parents' house during the pandemic, listed it as their permanent address for work, and got a paycheck, the parents somehow also worked for the employer, wrote White House spokesman Ian Sams. It's bananas, yet this is what extreme House Republicans have sunk into.
The Department of Justice may be prepared to close the book on the Hunter Biden saga, but on Capitol Hill, Republicans are just getting started.
So I think other investigations will go on.
Republicans remain convinced the president's family is involved in a bribery scheme, which they allege involve Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. The president has denied any wrongdoing and has said he has never spoke to his son about his business deals. And the plea deal Hunter just cut also does not involve his overseas work. But Republicans on both the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees are continuing to conduct wide-ranging probes of the president's family, as well as federal law enforcement unfairly targeting former President Trump.
Speaking of bananas, the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in the United States wasn't reported until January 2020, and shutdowns were still a year away when Hunter Biden used his dad's house as a beneficiary address on a wire payment. According to Hunter's memoir, he was living in Los Angeles with his new wife at the time. Of course, even if the pandemic had been raging by summer 2019, Hunter Biden wasn't a college student visiting home. He was a 49-year-old who had the wherewithal to craft numerous international million-dollar deals, not to mention allegedly evade taxes, buy firearms illegally. Why would Hunter need to stay at Daddy's house? Why do they keep talking about this grown man as if he's a toddler?
My first question is, who bribed Hunter Biden to be here today? That's my first question. Second question, you are the epitome of white privilege, coming into the Oversight Committee, spitting in our face, ignoring a congressional subpoena to be deposed. What are you afraid of? You have no balls to come up here and...
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Mr. Chairman,
If the gentlelady wants to hear from Hunter Biden, we can hear from him right now, Mr. Chairman. Let's take a vote and hear from Hunter Biden. What are you afraid of?
Hold on. Order.
Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Could you keep interrupting me?
For God's sake, this is an accomplished artist whose work goes for upwards of $1 million. And it wasn't a paycheck, but a wire transfer from a Chi-Com investment firm that his father repeatedly lied about to the American people. In an October 2019 presidential debate, Joe Biden incredulously claimed that Hunter never benefited from Chinese interests. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about... What are you talking about, China?
Joe, and they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
It was weird even then that Biden could make such an assertion with confidence, considering that not long before he had claimed to never have spoken to Hunter about his overseas business dealings. Perhaps one day the president will be asked by the political media why he made this claim and whether he knew his address was being used on Biden Incor's paperwork at the time. And while they're at it, they could ask him whether he was at his Wilmington house in 2017 when his son threatened his Chinese partner, Henry Zhao, with the words, "I am sitting here with my father."
Tonight, President Biden is emphatically denying he was present when his son Hunter allegedly texted a Chinese business partner in 2017 demanding payment.
Were you involved? No, I wasn't. Were you? No.
IRS Supervisory Agent Gary Shapley, now a whistleblower, told lawmakers he obtained WhatsApp messages he says were sent by Hunter Biden. He says Hunter Biden used his father as leverage to pressure a Chinese businessman into paying him. Quote, "I'm sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled," adding, "You will regret not following my direction."
Let's also remember that not only did Joe Biden fly his son to Beijing aboard Air Force Two during an official visit in 2013 to meet with potential investors, but the vice president met Jonathan Lee, whose name is on the 2019 wire transfer, for coffee. The two would talk again on the phone, probably just some casual conversations or niceties about the weather. Joe was even kind enough to write college recommendation letters for Lee's son and daughter.
These were targeted and specific subpoenas, and each was different based on the information we believed the banks possessed. Every one of those subpoenas returned valuable information that had been unreported and that contributed to this committee's understanding of how the Bidens conducted their businesses. The committee is concerned by the complicated, suspicious network of over 20 companies. We have identified the Bidens and their associates used to enrich themselves.
Willfully subverting the U.S. Constitution in this manner is a capital crime. When the ultimate objective is to dissolve the American Republic in order to transfer sovereignty to the United Nations, that's a far more serious transgression. It's just a rotten pack led by a crazy old man. Is that the kind of future you and I want? Should such deceitful people be in government?